How well prepared are you? What will you say when your teenager comes home and says, "We learned all about evolution at school today and how it works"? Or if your workmate says to you, "How can you deny evolution when the fossils prove it?" Or what if your neighbour says to you, "How can there be a good God when there's so much suffering in the world?" These conversations are great opportunities to have a real impact in someone's life. And I want to tell you that it's possible to give solid answers that make sense, that cause non-Christian people to think, well, maybe it's not all myth and wishful thinking after all. Maybe I should find out more. All you need is to get your hands on the right information. You'll find that there are sensible answers to virtually every question or objection. So the first reason that the evolution versus creation issue matters is that we need to be prepared for conversations around this topic. We need to be able to defend our faith, not just so that we can feel more confident, but so that we can be fruitful and effective. We've been called to be salt and light in this world, to make a difference. And we're surrounded by lost people in desperate need of help and direction. The second reason that this discussion matters is that the Bible is under attack. And the theory of evolution has been the greatest and most successful attack on the Bible ever. We read daily in the media about the tragic results of abandoning the biblical worldview. Now some, even in the church, think that the creation-evolution debate, it's a sideshow, is not worth focusing on. But I want to tell you that for those outside the church looking in, it is not a side issue at all, and it's very much what they're focused on. Evolution is the greatest reason given by people outside the church why they don't believe the Bible. You may be surprised to learn that this issue affects the core message of the Bible, salvation, Jesus' death on the cross, as we'll see later. Another reason why this is important. Now, I want to suggest to you that when you boil it all down, there are three really big questions that we all face regarding our time on this planet. The ultimate questions of life, you could call them. Question number one, where did I come from? What's my origin? Number two, why am I here? Or what's my purpose in life? And number three, where am I going next? Or what happens when I die? And I also want to suggest to you that your answers to questions 2 and 3 depend entirely on how you answer question 1. If life started randomly and we evolved with no creator, then your time on this planet has no meaning, no ultimate purpose, and when you die, that's it. End of story, job done. Our children are taught this worldview, and then we wonder why the youth suicide rate is so high. I'm sure you'll agree that it's tragic, but unsurprising. Our young people are not stupid. If we tell them that they are nothing more than rearranged pond scum, then they will come to the entirely logical conclusion that they have no more value than pond scum, and they will act accordingly. And we're seeing this. The evolution issue matters. It's not just an interesting intellectual discussion. Lives really are at stake. To put it another way, ideas have consequences, and bad ideas have bad consequences. So arguably, the question, where did I come from, is the most important question that we can ask. Before we look at some more evidence, I need to explain something about science. Not all types of science are equal. When most people think of science, they think of what we call operational science. Operational or experimental science, it's repeatable, it's measurable, there are well-defined laws that accurately predict outcomes. There's not much debate about this type of science. It's a sort of science that gives us cell phones and microwave ovens and sends rockets to the moon. Generally speaking, operational science provides us with lots of beneficial technologies, and it leads people to respect what scientists say. But when we talk about evolution or anything that happened in the past, it's not operational science. What we're dealing with here is historical or forensic science. This is not really repeatable or measurable because we weren't there. We can't repeat the Big Bang as an experiment or the spontaneous origin of life. We don't know the exact conditions or environment. We should remember what God said to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Some evidence will be available to us today, but it will be interpreted by a human. Both evolution and creation fall into this second category. So to reiterate, operational science deals with the present. It's observable, it's repeatable. This is the sort of science that underpins aviation, where there's no room for speculation or philosophical influences. It has to work. Note also that no one has ever found a conflict between the Bible and experimentation in operational science. But historical science, which is what we're discussing today, deals with the past. It's not observable or repeatable. This is an important distinction to make, and it's also where worldviews really come into play. This explains why there can be such different explanations for the same evidence. Both evolutionists and creationists are observing exactly the same data or evidence, but coming to very different conclusions because of their different worldviews. The second piece of evidence that I want to look at is genetics and mutations in particular. This is another area where the two histories are completely opposed. In the evolutionary version, we have evolved uphill from simple life forms to more complex. So we're supposedly getting better over time. The Bible, however, indicates that at the very beginning, Adam and Eve were genetically pure. After they disobeyed God and the whole of creation was cursed, mutations began to increase to the point where now around 100 additional new mutations are added per person every generation. So what are mutations? Mutations are changes in our DNA. Most commonly, they're errors that occur when our DNA is being copied. Now, mutations are not good. They're responsible for thousands of inherited diseases and cancer. So if we inherit 100 new mutations every generation, as well as the existing mutations already present in our family line, we're not improving. We're actually going downhill. The modern discovery of genetic entropy, that we are carrying an ever-increasing number of mutations, is exactly the opposite of the evolutionary story, but aligns perfectly with the Bible, which tells us that our genetic golden age was in the past, at the beginning. We're now degrading or going downhill. And we see this as the number of mutations increases in each successive generation. So if you're a fan of shows like X-Men, I'm sorry to break it to you, mutations don't give us superpowers. They give us diseases. This is also powerful evidence for the shorter biblical time frame, because at the rate mutations are increasing in us, the human race would have become extinct many times over if we had in fact been around for 1 million years. Evolutionary geneticist Alexei Kondrashov asked, why aren't we dead 100 times over? Another significant issue is the sequence of events. First, the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 5 that the first appearance of death is only after Adam and Eve rebel against God. Prior to that, there's no death, no sickness, no disease, a world that is totally good. In any millions of years scenario, however, death and suffering are there from the very beginning, part of the creative process, and certainly part of the picture before Adam and Eve appear. So if we accept the evolutionary time frame, we end up with this image of a supposedly very good Garden of Eden sitting on top of a fossil record depicting death and suffering. Doesn't make sense. Secondly, in the evolutionary version, mankind appears near the end of history. In the biblical version, mankind is there near the beginning.